I never thought I'd be the villain in my own family portrait. But there I was, 62, and staring down the barrel of a second chance at happiness. Only for my daughter Lila to load it herself. "You're too old for love," she'd spat over brunch at that overpriced Soho spot. Her fork stabbing a poached egg like it owed her money. Yolk bleeding across the plate like the last drops of my patience. That was the moment I decided the wedding would happen, vows and all. But her slice of the empire I'd built from my late husband's ashes? She'd get jack shit unless she came crawling. And even then, I'd make her beg in ways that would shatter her perfect little Instagram life. It started 6 months earlier, in the sterile hum of a midtown boardroom, the kind where deals are sealed with handshakes that feel like knife edges. I'd been widowed for 8 years. Ever since Richard's accident, that foggy Catskills morning when his Porsche wrapped around an oak tree, leaving me with a fortune in real estate and a daughter who acted like she'd been the one buried. Lila was 34 then, all sharp cheekbones and sharper ambitions, running the marketing arm of our family conglomerate like she owned it outright.
She didn't, I did.
But blood's thicker than ink. Or so I told myself as I signed off on her latest pet project, a luxury condo development in Brooklyn that was bleeding cash faster than a Wall Street divorce. That's when Marcus walked in. He was the architect, a broad-shouldered black man in his late 50s with salt and pepper hair and eyes that crinkled like they knew every secret you'd ever whispered in the dark. We'd met at a gala for the Whitney, me in a black sheath that hugged my postmenopause curves a little too honestly. Him in a tailored suit that screamed old money without the stuffiness. He bought me a drink. Not champagne, but a neat bourbon. And we talked about Frank Lloyd Wright until the crowd thinned to echoes. By the end of the night, his hand was on the small of my back, guiding me through the revolving doors like I was something precious, not a relic. Lila hated him on sight.
Mom.
"He's using you," she hissed the next morning over coffee in my Upper East Side penthouse, the Hudson glittering like fool's gold below us. She was in yoga pants and a tank that showed off her CrossFit abs, scrolling emails on her phone while I tried to explain that Marcus made me feel seen, not pitted. Seen? For what? Your 401k and a green card story. Her laugh was acid, the kind that eats through enamel. But I brushed it off. Mothers do that. Swallow the barbs to keep the peace. What I didn't know then was how deep her hooks were already sunk. The proposal came 3 months in, on a rainy afternoon in Central Park. Marcus dropped to one knee by the Bethesda fountain, the angels above us weeping sheet water, and slid a ring onto my finger that wasn't flashy, but solid, platinum with a single emerald. My birthstone. Because he'd listened when I said diamonds felt like bribes. I said yes before the rain soaked through. And for the first time since Richard's funeral, I slept without the ghost of his cologne haunting the sheets. Lila's reaction? A masterclass in passive aggression. She showed up to the engagement dinner at Le Bernardin with a bottle of vintage Krug and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "To new beginnings," she toasted, clinking her glass against mine so hard the stem nearly snapped. Marcus, ever the gentleman, charmed her with stories of his Harlem roots and the community center he funded upstate. She nodded along, all wide-eyed interest, but I caught the flickers, the way her gaze darted to his watch, appraising, or lingered on the menu like she was calculating the bill. By dessert, she was grilling him on his firm's finances, casual as a chat about the weather. Just curious. Mom's safety net and all. I laughed it off, but the seed was planted. Doubt. Her favorite fertilizer. As wedding plans ramped up, Vera Wong for the gown, a string quartet for the vows, Lila's sabotage started small. Anonymous tips to the wedding planner about Marcus's ex-wife drama. He was divorced. Amicably. A decade ago. Whispers to our board about conflicts of interest in the Brooklyn project. I confronted her once. Over martinis at the King Cole bar. The mural's laughing king mocking us both. Why are you doing this? I asked, voice low to avoid the tourists. She leaned in, breath minty from the gum she chewed like a weapon. Because you're blind.
Mom.
He's after the company. And you're just the key to the vault. Her words landed like a slap. But I held firm. This isn't about the money, Lila. It's about me. She rolled her eyes. Everything's about the money. You taught me that. I should have seen the betrayal brewing. But grief has a way of dulling the edges. Richard's death wasn't just a crash. It was a cover-up I'd buried deeper than his casket. 8 years prior, on that twisting Route 17, he'd been drunk, 3 whiskeys deep from a client dinner, and swerved into the tree to avoid a deer. But the passenger? Lila. She'd been 26. Fresh out of Wharton. Riding shotgun after he'd pick her up from a bar crawl in Albany. The police report said solo occupant, because that's what I paid the responding officer to write. 50 grand wired to an offshore account. And poof, no charges. No headlines. Richard died on impact. Lila walked away with a concussion and a secret that bound us like chains. I'd done it for her future. To keep the family name pristine. The stock prices steady. We protect our own, I'd whispered to her in the hospital. Her head bandaged, eyes glassy from painkillers. She nodded then, swore she'd never tell. But secrets fester, and Lila's had teeth. She'd used it as leverage ever since, subtle reminders in board meetings. A raised eyebrow when I pushed back on her spending. Remember what Dad would want, she'd say. And I'd fold. Every time. Marcus changed that. He saw the cracks. The way I'd flinch at sudden noises or stare too long at family photos. One night, tangled in his sheets in his West Village brownstone, I confessed it all, the crash, the bribe, the guilt that gnawed like termites. He held me after. No judgment. Just his heartbeat steady against my cheek. You're not a monster, Emery. You're a mother who chose love over law. For the first time, I believed it. But Lila, she weaponized it. 2 weeks before the wedding, she cornered me in my office overlooking Bryant Park, the leaves turning fire red like warnings ignored. Call it off, she demanded, slamming a folder on my desk. Inside, printouts of Marcus's emails, altered to show him pitching our properties to competitors. Forged. I knew instantly, the timestamps off, the language too stiff for his easy cadence. He's playing you,
Mom.
just like Dad played his mistresses. That was the knife twist, Richard's affairs. The ones I'd ignored for the sake of the brand. How did she know? Because I'd confessed those too, in weaker moments, thinking it built trust. I covered for you, I whispered, voice cracking. The accident. Your fault for egging him on, daring him to drive faster. And this is how you repay me. Her face twisted. Not remorse, but fury. My fault? He was the drunk. And you? You bought silence like it was a spa day. We're even.
Lies.
She'd been the one passing the flask in the car, laughing as the speedometer climbed. I'd seen the dashcam footage before scrubbing it, her hand on the bottle, his on the wheel. That's when the revenge ignited, cold and precise as a scalpel. I didn't scream. I smiled. The wedding's on, darling. But your shares? Transferred to a trust. For charitable causes. Her eyes widened, the color draining like bad makeup. You can't.
Oh.
I could. By morning, my lawyers had redrafted the will. Everything to Marcus and me, with Lila getting a modest annuity, enough for rent, not for the lifestyle she craved. Prove your family, I told her. And maybe I'll reconsider. She flipped then, allying with Marcus overnight. Calls to him, tears in her voice, help me talk sense into her. He told me everything, loyal to the bone. But it stung, my own blood scheming behind my back. The board meeting that followed was a circus, Lila presenting evidence of my declining judgment, Marcus countering with audits, showing her Brooklyn flop as the real sinkhole. I sat silent, letting them tear at each other, until I dropped the bomb. The accident files. Declassified by a PI I'd hired. Gasps rippled. Lila's face went ghost white.
Mom.
Please, she mouthed, but I turned away. The rehearsal dinner was a powder keg. At 11 Madison Park, under crystal chandeliers that dripped like venom, Lila arrived arm in arm with Richard's old partner, Victor, a sleazy hedge funder with a comb-over and a grudge. She'd flipped again, trading secrets for his support in a proxy fight to oust me. Family sticks together, she purred, but her eyes screamed checkmate. Marcus tensed beside me, his hand under the table squeezing mine. Let her dig her own grave, he murmured. She did. Beautifully. Midway through the lobster course, Victor's phone lit up with a subpoena, my PI's work, tying him to the very embezzlement I'd suspected Lila of greenlighting in Brooklyn. Turns out, she'd funneled funds through his accounts, skimming for her side hustle, a startup that was really a Ponzi dressed in millennial pink. The room froze, forks clattered. Lila bolted for the bathroom, but not before hissing at me. This is war.
Mom.
You'll lose everything. War? Honey, I'd been fighting it since the day I buried your father for you. The days blurred into a haze of legal briefs and whispered threats, the kind that slithered through voicemails at 3 a.m. Lila's next move was pure venom. She leaked the accident story to Page 6, twisting it into a tabloid fever dream. Heiress mom bribes cops in fatal crash cover-up. The byline was anonymous, but her perfume lingered on the printed clippings she FedExed to my door, wrapped in tissue paper stained with what looked like tears or Merlot. New York ate it up. Headlines screamed from newsstands at every corner deli. My face pixelated next to Richard's wrecked Porsche. Protests erupted outside our HQ on Park Avenue. Sign-waving millennials chanting, "Justice for the forgotten," as if they knew the half of it. I didn't crumble. Instead, I leaned into Marcus, his arms a bunker against the storm. We holed up in his brownstone, ordering Thai from the spot on Bleecker that delivered with a wink and a free spring roll. She's cornered, he said one night, as rain lashed the windows like accusations. People like Lila, they lash out when the mirror cracks. He was right. Her cunning was unraveling into desperation. Calls from reporters I ignored, emails from board members hedging bets. But the real gut punch? The call from Aunt Evelyn, Richard's spinster sister, who'd raised me after my parents' divorce in that dusty Tulsa trailer park. Emery, is it true? Covering for her like that. You're no better than he was. That hit harder than any headline. I'd clawed my way from Oklahoma dust to Manhattan marble, marrying Richard at 22 in a shotgun wedding that birthed Lila 9 months later. He was the golden boy, heir to a real estate dynasty I was the ambitious secretary with stars in her eyes. We built an empire on grit and greed, skyscrapers that pierced the clouds, deals that bent zoning laws like pretzels. But Richard's wandering eye? I'd ignored it for the lifestyle. The private jets to Aspen. The Met Galas where I felt like Audrey Hepburn reborn. When he died, I stepped up. Not just as widow but CEO. Turning grief into fuel. For Lila. Always for Lila.
Now?
She was dismantling it brick by brick. Her alliance with Victor deepened. They were spotted at the Polo Bar. Her hand on his knee, laughing that throaty laugh she'd stolen from my old records of Billie Holiday. Word got back via my assistant, a whip-smart Columbia grad named Theo, who moonlighted as my eyes and ears. "She's pitching him your Hudson Yards parcel," he whispered in the elevator. The doors closing like a confessional. "Says you'll fold under the scandal." I nodded, jaw set. "Let her. Then we'll counter." The counter was surgical. I called in favors. Old clients from Richard's poker nights. Senators who'd golfed at our Hamptons links. By week's end, Victor's fund was under SEC scrutiny. Tipped off anonymously with ledgers I'd had Theo forge from real data. Not illegal.
Just
inconvenient. Lila's startup imploded overnight. Investors pulled out faster than rats from a fire. Her co-founders scattering like roaches. She showed up at my penthouse at midnight, pounding the door until the doorman threatened to call the cops. I buzzed her up, glass of Pinot in hand, Marcus in the study pretending to work. She burst in like a hurricane, hair wild, mascara tracks carving rivers down her cheeks. "You bitch," she snarled, but her voice broke on the edges. "You ruined me." I gestured to the couch, the leather still warm from my afternoon nap.
sit.
Or don't. But listen. She paced instead, heels clicking like metronomes of rage. The story poured out then, not excuses, but accusations. Dad's crash? I didn't make him drink. He was always half in the bottle, chasing skirts while you played perfect wife. And that bribe? Your idea?
Mom.
You wired the money yourself. Said it was business protection. Lies wrapped in half-truths. The devil's favorite candy. Yes. I'd initiated the payoff, but only after she begged, sobbing in the ER waiting room. They'll take everything if they know I was there. I'd protected her then. As always, foregoing therapy for boardroom battles. Therapy for her. I mean, because who has time for shrinks when the Dow's dipping? But hearing it twisted, her victim act polished to a sheen, ignited something primal. You were 26. Lila. Old enough to know better than to play Russian roulette with your father's life. She laughed.
Bitter as burnt coffee.
And you? 62 and shacking up with the help. Marcus isn't after your heart. He's after the penthouse view. That's when Marcus emerged, silent as a shadow, folder in hand. He laid it on the coffee table, screenshots of her text to Victor, plotting to seduce him into a takeover. "Read it," he said, voice even. But his eyes, God, those eyes, held the storm. She snatched it, scanned, then hurled it back. "Fabrications. You're both delusional." But doubt flickered in her. I saw it. The micro-tremor in her lip. She flipped again, collapsing onto the couch, head in hands. I can't lose you to him. You're all I have left of Dad." Crocodile tears. Or were they? Motherhood's curse. You never know where empathy ends and manipulation begins. I knelt beside her, against every instinct screaming run. Then stop fighting me. Support the wedding. And we fix this. Together. She nodded, wiping her face. And for a heartbeat, it felt like absolution. We hugged, her body rigid at first, then softening, the scent of her Chanel No. 5 mingling with my Chanel No. 5, ironic.
That.
The truce lasted 48 hours. Wedding Eve. As florists swarmed the chapel with calla lilies and emerald ribbons, Theo burst into the bridal suite, laptop glowing. She's at it again. Live feed from a hidden cam in her office. Lila on speaker with a journal reporter. Spilling dirt on Marcus's shady past, a fabricated assault charge from his divorce. Pure fiction but toxic in print. The article hit online at 6 p.m. just as guests arrived in limos snaking up Fifth Avenue. Protesters multiplied outside, now chanting Marcus's name alongside mine. A 2-for-1 scandal special. I didn't cry. I powdered my nose, adjusted my veil, and walked down the aisle to Pachelbel's cannon, Marcus waiting like a lighthouse in the gale. Lila sat front row, face a mask of feigned innocence, Victor conspicuously absent, his fund frozen that morning, courtesy of my allies. Vows exchanged, rings slipped on with trembling fingers, and as the officiant pronounced us man and wife, my phone vibrated in my clutch. A text from Lila, congrats. But remember, blood always wins. She was wrong. That night, in the honeymoon suite at the plaza, Marcus and I toasted with room service champagne, the city lights winking like conspirators. But sleep evaded me. The sheets too crisp, the future too frayed. What had I unleashed? A daughter unmoored, a legacy in tatters. Revenge tasted like ash. Even as I blocked her from the accounts at dawn, final cut, irrevocable. Or so I thought. The honeymoon was a farce. 3 days in the Berkshires pretending the world hadn't imploded. We hiked leaf-strewn trails, Marcus pointing out maples turning crimson like spilled secrets. But my mind wandered to Lila, holed up in her Williamsburg loft, no doubt plotting her next siege. Calls went unanswered, texts bounced back undelivered. I'd cut her off digitally too, a nuclear option Theo executed with a few keystrokes. For your sanity, Mrs. Hail, he'd said, using my new name like armor. Sanity? It felt like amputation. Back in the city, the real war ignited. Lila's proxy battle hit the board like a grenade. Petitions signed by mid-level execs she'd charmed with wine and whispers, demanding my resignation for ethical lapses. The accident bribe was Exhibit A. But she piled on allegations of nepotism, hers. Ironically, inflated vendor contracts, hers again. And now, a smear on Marcus as a gold-digging opportunist. The meeting was set for a Thursday in our glass-walled conference room, skyline mocking us with its indifference. I prepared like a general, dossiers on every traitor, leverage from years of quiet favors. Marcus coached me through mock debates, his law degree from Howard shining in strategy sessions over takeout falafel from the halal cart. Don't attack her directly, he'd advise, pacing the living room rug worn from Richard's pacing. Expose the pattern. She's the chameleon, not you. Pattern, yes. Lila's life was a series of flips. Best friend in high school ghosted after borrowing her prom dress. College roommate sued for creative accounting on shared rent. Even her ex-fiancé dumped via email the day after he co-signed her student loans. Cunning? Undeniable. Loyal? To herself alone. The boardroom showdown was electric. Air thick with cologne and concealed daggers. Lila entered last, in a power suit the color of gunmetal, hair pulled into a bun tight as her resolve. She presented first, projector humming like a swarm, slides of irregularities, my face blurred in photos from the crash site, voiceover audio, deep-faked. I later learned of me authorizing the bribe. Gasps from the suits, old men in Hermes ties who'd toasted Richard at his wake. Emery's judgment is compromised, she concluded, voice steady as a surgeon's. For the good of the company, she must step down. My turn. I dimmed the lights, cued my deck, timelines of her Brooklyn debacle, wire transfers to Victor's Cayman accounts, emails where she greenlit kickbacks disguised as consulting fees. The room shifted, murmurs rising like steam. This isn't about me, I said, clicking to a photo of Richard and Lila, arms linked at her college graduation, smiles wide as the Hudson. It's about legacy. One we've both stained. I paused, letting it sink. But I covered for her once. No more. Lila's rebuttal was a spectacle, tears on cue, voice quavering. Mom's twisting facts to protect her toy boy. Dad died because of her neglect, pushing him too hard at work, ignoring his breakdowns. The bribe? Survival. But marrying Marcus? That's desperation. And it's tanking our stock. Stock charts flashed, dipping red since the scandal. She flipped the board's sympathy, painting me as the aging harpy, her the wounded heir. Hands voted, 7-5 against me. Tiebreaker? Lila's swing vote, withheld like a guillotine. Abstain, she said, eyes locked on mine. Unless you annul the marriage. Publicly. Checkmate. Or so she thought. Marcus, who'd been silent in the corner, stood then uninvited, but unchallenged. Before you vote, he said, voice like gravel under tires. Consider this. He slid a USB across the table. Theo synced it to the screen. Footage, Lila. In grainy security cam glory. Slipping files into Victor's briefcase at a gala 6 months back. Not just embezzlement, identity theft. Using my old social to open credit lines in my name. The board recoiled. Lila's face crumpled. Mask slipping.
That's
edited. But it wasn't. My PI had tailed her for weeks, capturing the handover. The vote flipped 8-4 in my favor. Lila stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Victor called that afternoon. Voice oily. Your daughter's a liability. Emery. Buy me out. I laughed. The first real one in weeks. Buy you in. Victor.
to jail.
By evening, his assets were seized, FBI tipped, white-collar wolf circling. Lila's next flip was suicidal. She went public. A tearful interview on CNN's prime time. Vanessa Hawk interviewing her like a sob story saint. My mother's revenge is destroying our family, she wept, clutching a locket with Richard's photo. All because I told the truth about her love at her age. The clip went viral, too old for love trending. Memes of me as a cougar caricature. Think pieces in The Atlantic debating generational betrayal in the C-suite. Protests swelled. Our stock plummeted 15%. Marcus urged caution. She's baiting you. Don't bite. But I did. The retaliation was controversial. The kind that splits dinner parties down the middle. I countersued for defamation, fraud, the works, naming Lila as primary defendant. Press conference at our HQ, cameras flashing like gunfire. My daughter chose war. I'll fight for what's mine. Whispers rippled. Heartless or justified? Marcus stood beside me, hand on my elbow, but his eyes held worry, the first crack in our armor. Climax brewed that weekend at the family lake house in the Adirondacks, a sprawling cedar manse Richard bought for bonding that saw more martinis than memories. Lila texted coordinates. Truce talk. Come alone. Against Marcus's protests. It's a trap. I drove up solo. The throughway a blur of taillights and regret. Autumn fog cloaked the pines as I pulled in. The house loomed, lights flickering like a bad omen. She waited on the dock, bundled in a parka, the lake black as ink below. You're here, she said. No hug, just a nod. We walked the pier, boots crunching frost, breath clouds mingling. I didn't want this, she started, voice small. The leak. The board, it was Victor pushing. He promised to back me if I delivered you on a platter. Flip again. Ally turned adversary. Her the pawn? I wanted to believe it. The mother in me clawing for redemption. Then end it. Drop the suit. The stories. Be my maid of honor. For God's sake. She turned, eyes gleaming in the half-moon. And what? Watch you play house while I scrape by on your crumbs?
No.
Dad left me half in his will, before you revised it post-crash.
Lie.
Richard's will was ironclad, me's sole executor. But doubt wormed in. Had she found a codicil? Prove it, I challenged. She pulled an envelope from her pocket, yellowed paper trembling in her grip. Inside, a letter. Richard's scrawl, dated weeks before the accident. To Lila, if anything happens, fight her. The company's yours by right.
Love.
Dad. Heart stop. Forged or real, the signature matched. The paper aged just so. He told me everything, she pressed. Your affairs too. That summer in the Hamptons with the pool boy. He forgave you. I won't. Affairs? Plural? I'd strayed once. Guilt-ridden. Confessed years ago.
But this.
This was her masterstroke. Flipping the narrative. Me the betrayer. Her the avenger. We argued into the night. Voices echoing over the water. Me defending my sacrifices. Her cataloging my sins. You took the fall for nothing, I shouted. The crash was your dare. She laughed.
Wild.
And the bribe your salvation. Were poison.
Mom.
Both. The dock swayed. I grabbed the rail. Vertigo hitting hard. In that moment, hands lunging, hers for the letter, mine for balance, we teetered. She slipped first. Or did I push? The splash was thunder. Her scream cut short by the cold black. I dove after, lungs burning, hauling her sodden form to shore. CPR frantic, ribs cracking under my palms, until she coughed lake water.
Gasping.
Why? She wheezed. Because you're mine, I sobbed, holding her as sirens wailed distant. Rescue came, hospital in Saratoga. Marcus arriving at dawn, face ashen. What happened? Lies tumbled, accident, fog, struggle for the letter. But her eyes, when she woke cuffed to the bed, wait, cuffed? Hospital security. Pending assault charges she'd file later, held no gratitude. Only war. The aftermath was a media maelstrom. Helicopters buzzing the hospital like vultures. Paparazzi scaling fences for a shot of the heiress horror. Lila played the victim card masterfully, press her from her bedside. Bruises blooming like accusations. Voice hoarse but heroic, my mother's unraveling. This truce was attempted murder. Justice for Lila trended harder than ever. Donors pulling from our foundation. Clients canceling leases. The board reconvened virtually. I was ousted 10-2. My empire fracturing like fault lines in the Appalachians. Marcus stood firm. Selling his firm to fund our defense. Top-tier attorneys from Scadden. The kind who bill by the heartbeat. We'll win, he promised in our temporary rental in Chelsea. A walk-up that smelled of paint and possibility. But nights were hell. Nightmares of the dock. Her face submerging. My hands the anchors. Had I pushed? In the chaos. Memory blurred, self-defense or subconscious sabotage. Therapy sessions with a Park Slope shrink unpacked it. Ambivalent attachment, she diagnosed. Billing $400 an hour for words that meant, you both suck at love. Lila's flips accelerated. A carousel of allegiance. Day 1 post-hospital. Cease and desist to her lawyers. Brokered by Aunt Evelyn as mediator. Family therapy. Evelyn decreed over Zoom. Her Tulsa twang cutting through the static. We agreed. Sessions in a neutral midtown office. Circle of chairs like a bad AA meeting. First one. Lila arrived with Victor's replacement. A slick DA named Harlan who'd prosecuted white-collar cases, her new shield. Pro bono, she smirked. I countered with Marcus. His presence a bomb. The therapist. A no-nonsense shrink named Dr.
Row.
Dove in. Betrayal starts at home. Emery. You covered her crime. Lila. You exploited it. Unpacking took weeks. Richard's alcoholism confessed as generational. My Oklahoma grit as armor too thick. Lila admitted the embezzlement. I needed to prove I was more than Daddy's shadow. But the crash? She doubled down. He chose to drive. I just wanted his attention. Attention. The word hung. A noose of neglect. I'd been absent too. Boardrooms over bedtime stories. Mergers over milestones. Mirror held up. We were twins in toxicity. Twist came mid-therapy. Session 5.
Dr.
Rao passed a file. Richard's autopsy. Unsealed by court order. Toxicology, not just whiskey, but roofies in his system, date rape remnants from the client dinner. But the flask? Lila's prints only. She'd spiked it. Not egged him on a deliberate blackout to teach him a lesson for ignoring her pitch that night. You were cutting me out, she wept. Like always. My world tilted. Not accident. But attempted filicide? No, fratricide. Sibling to parent. I'd taken the fall for murderlight. Rage boiled. But so did pity. Why me? I asked. Voice a whisper. Because you could have stopped him. But you chose the company. Flip final. She was an avenger. She was abyss. Pulling us both under. The session ended in silence. Harlan waited outside. But she waved him off. Later. A call. Drop the suit?
Mom.
I'll confess. Community service? Maybe. In exchange, reinstate my shares. And annul him. Annul Marcus? The man who'd seen my scars and stayed?
No. But the board?
Leverage. I met her at the lake house again. Alone. Snow dusting the dock like forgotten confetti. Confess publicly, I said. Envelope of my own in hand. Her full confession. Recorded secretly. And you get 20%. The rest stays with me and Marcus. No more games. She signed. Eyes hollow.
Deal.
But know this. Love at your age? It's just fear of dying alone. Her confession hit 60 minutes that Sunday. A mea culpa in soft focus. I hurt my mother. Time to heal. Stock rebounded. Board reinstated me conditionally. Victor? Indicted. His empire dust. But the wedding, our quiet vow renewal in the brownstone garden. Cherry blossoms defiant against April chill, Lila skipped. A card arrived. Too old for love. But not for legacy. Ending? Debatable. I kept the date. The man. The company. Victory Pyrrhic. Laced with what-ifs. Lila vanished to LA, finding herself in wellness retreats. Her annuity funding facials over felonies. We speak holidays only. Voices polite as telemarketers. Marcus and I, we build anew community centers in Harlem. Scholarships for Tulsa girls with stars in their eyes. Happy? In moments.
Yes.
But the scar, a mother's love, twisted into revenge, leaves you wondering, who's the monster?
Me.
For blocking her path? Her? For drowning the family in deceit? Or both? American as apple pie a la mode sweet. Rotten. Impossible to spit out. Blood always wins.
She said.
Maybe. But love?
It endures.
Gray hairs and all. A quiet fuck you to the doubters. Even if it costs everything.